be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. At that time, when the Pharisees heard that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, they came together. And one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. "Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law?" And he said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets." The Gospel of the Lord. My dear brothers and sisters, once more a gospel in three parts. So Jesus has silenced the Sadducees. The Sadducees were a particular part of the religious life of Israel. There were Sadducees, there were Pharisees, and Jesus had put the Sadducees to silence, and so the Pharisees now come together and want to have their go. And they asked Jesus an interesting question. What is the great commandment in the law? And here we have the first part of the gospel where Jesus says, love the Lord your God. Love him totally. Love him radically. Love him deeply and love him with everything that you have, your entire being. That is the great commandment. And it sounds good, doesn't it? It sounds good. It sounds relatively easy. It sounds right. It sounds like we should do this. This is fantastic. Yes, let's love God. That's what we're all about. But the reality is much harder. For those of you who have been in love, for those of you who are married, who remain in love, you know that the reality of love itself is hard. Because the reality of love involves work, compromise, sacrifice, and sometimes suffering. And the reality of loving God is no different. The reality of loving God is no different, especially with a love that is radically beyond any kind of human love that we could have in this world. A total love, a self-sacrificing, self-effacing love. Imagine the kind of hard work, the kind of sacrifice, the kind of struggle that demands of us to truly love God. I have sacrificed for what I love. I love the church. I love the faith. I have a wedding ring because I am wed to my faith and to the church in a special way. Each and every one of you who have been in love, who are in love, who remain in love, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And those watching who have yet to fall in love, you will soon know. Think how long it took for you to get where you are in your marriage, in your relationship. Think of how long it took for you to fall in love as you are now with your partner. It wasn't an instantaneous thing. For most people, they don't see their partner at a bar or on the beach or in a shopping center and think to themselves, I love that person and I will marry them right now and we will spend the rest of our lives together and I will shower gifts upon them and I will sacrifice for them and I will toil for them. It was a long slog. It was a gradual process. A process of getting to know one another. It's the same thing with God. It's the same thing for God. We can't sit here in the church and say, I love God and I'll do everything for God and I'll sacrifice for God and I totally radically love God, and it's instantaneous. It's not. To love the Lord our God, to love Him radically, to love Him totally, is also a long slog. A long slog of getting to know Him and Him getting to know us. A long slog of maturing and growing and deepening in love. And that also requires work and sacrifice, compromise and commitment. So when we look at this first part of the gospel, to love the Lord our God with all our heart and all our mind and all our soul, to love Him radically, to love Him deeply, let us think of the love that we have in our lives. The love that we carry for our partners, the love that we carried for those partners who have gone before us. Let us remember how hard we worked to have that love, how hard we currently work to maintain that love, our compromises, our sacrifices, our struggles. And let us remember that it will be the same for God and with God. And we must not expect any different. The second part of the gospel, Jesus says, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And it's interesting that he says that because that's not the question the lawyer asked him. The question the lawyer asked him was, what is the great commandment? Punto basta, full stop. Don't go any further, Jesus. All I want to know is, what is the great commandment? Jesus gives him the great commandment, but then he gives him more. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And he gives him more because one follows from the other. Each and every one of us are made in the image and likeness of the God that we serve and the God that we love. Each and every one of us are brothers and sisters. And so if we claim to love God, if we sacrifice for God, if we compromise for God, if we struggle for God, if we grow in love of God and deepen our relationship with God, then that should have an effect, a permanent, a lasting, a true effect on how we interact with our brothers and sisters who are made in His image and likeness. Love your neighbor as yourself. I want us all to think, my dear brothers and sisters, as we consider our relationship with God and as we consider the nature of our love for God, how have we treated others around us? What have we said about them? What have we thought about them? Because they're a different culture, because they're a different color, because they think a little differently. How have we loved our brothers and sisters, made in the image and likeness of God? And finally, the last part of the gospel, Jesus says, on these two commandments rest the law and the prophets. Again, he gives the lawyer more than the lawyer asked for. Because the law and the prophets, Moses and Elijah, are the entire Old Testament. Jesus is saying these two laws here, these two commandments, on these two commandments rest the entire Old Testament. And remember, Jesus is an Old Testament person. He came to usher in the New Testament. But he was a good Jew. And as any good Jew, he would have learned the Old Testament back to front. He's rabbi, he's teacher. And he says the entire structure of the Jewish religious faith rests on these two commandments. Now remember, the purpose of the Old Testament was to restore the broken relationship of man with God, to bring us closer to God and to redeem fallen humanity. What is Jesus saying here? To love the Lord your God with all your mind, all your heart, and all your soul, and to love your brother as yourself. Well, that's the only true way that you're going to be redeemed. That's the only true way that you get close to God. That's the only true way you restore the broken relationship. And the New Testament bears this out. St. John, God is love, and those who dwell in love dwell in God and God in them. So finally, my dear brothers and sisters, let us consider our faith. What is the meaning of our faith for us? What is the meaning of our faith life for us if it has not drawn us closer to God, if it has not forced us to love God radically and totally and completely? If we sit in a church and raise our hands, but we do not love our brothers and sisters, we do not see Christ in them, what is the meaning of our religion for us then? All difficult questions that each and every one of us have to ask ourselves in the light of this gospel. So I encourage each and every one of you to reread this gospel in your own time today and to ask yourselves these pertinent and difficult questions. Amen.